Indian Express analysis on StudyIQ IS English channel. Now today is 27th of February, so let us start with our today's discussion. And as you can see from the screen behind me, there are 7 important articles that we are going to cover today, right? Good evening Saujanya, good evening Sejal, Narsima, good evening, Rishav, good evening, Ayush who has joined us right now, good evening. Now, today we'll be discussing 7 articles. We'll start off with the measure that has been taken by RBI to boost credit supply to the non-banking financial corporations. Now, you understand these non-banking financial corporations, these are responsible for extending loans for many productive purposes. But how do they source the money from? They source them from banks. So, in order to relax the method of extending loans from banks to NBFCs, RBI has made a certain decision and we are going to look into that. And this kind of a measure, it is important from GS paper 3 because the syllabus, if you look at GS paper 3, in the first line itself, it highlights issues in Indian economy and also relating to mobilization of resources. What is mobilization of resources? One of the resources also money. So therefore, it is important from GS paper 3 perspective. Also, we'll be dealing with PM Kisan scheme as more than 6 years has been completed and very recently Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended the 19th installment under this PM Kisan scheme. So we'll look into the various provisions of PM Kisan scheme, who all are eligible to get benefits, who are all not, will understand this. Now this is also important from GS paper 3 as it deals with agricultural sector, particularly input support in the agricultural sector. Then we'll be moving on to the Kaziranga National Park as External Minister Dr. S. J. Shankar along with many ambassadors of foreign countries into India. They went on a trip with Kaziranga National Park. And what is this Kaziranga National Park, where it is located, what it is, or which kind of an animal particularly is this national park known for? We'll all discuss this in our today's article. Now this becomes important particularly from the perspective of many important protected area that remains in news. So we'll be dealing with it in our today's discussion. Now such type of an article, they are primarily important from our prelims perspective, right? Then we'll be moving on to understanding the harmful effect of black plastics. What are these black plastics? These are plastics which are used to make the containers that you get in food delivery, right? So these containers, if they are used and reused particularly, there is a chance that the harmful chemicals that are present in the black plastics will leach onto your food chain, right? So that is how we'll try to understand the origin of black plastics, their use and also their harmful effects. This is primarily important from GS paper 3 perspective, that is environmental pollution, right? Then we'll be moving on to another geographical related article. It highlights the reasons why Iraq is sinking into the earth. We'll understand the reasons for it, particularly with respect to a mountain ranges that ranges from Iran, Turkey and Iraq, and why this mountain range is actually sinking into the earth. We'll try to understand the reasons for it. And this is important from GS paper 3 perspective as this matter broadly relates to plate tectonics. Then we'll be moving on to the spinal muscular atrophy. This is a neurological condition that actually leads to difficulty in moving of a person, right? It affects the muscles of a person. Therefore, this kind of a disease is important again from the science and tech perspective. Therefore, GS paper 3. In the end, we'll be discussing about the impact of tax cut on Indian economy and why we are going to discuss this, because as you can see, India's finance minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, on her budget speech made the most popular announcement, that was exempting people earning up to 12 lakh rupees from paying income taxes. Now, this naturally will increase the amount of disposable income that the people will have, and eventually it will lead to many positive effects on the economy. So, this article actually appeared in the newspaper, written by a former CEO of the Niti Aayog. So, you understand that person knows one or two things about economy, right? So, we'll be understanding in detail what are the implications of such tax rate cuts, what may not be the implications, that we'll try to critically analyze this article. So these are the articles that we are going to cover today. Good evening, Baga Spings, Ashil, Kusum, Gibson, Arya, Shushmita, all of you, good evening. Now, as you know the drill, I'll be making the notes available on my Telegram channel ATS Live. You can search this Telegram channel on the top right hand corner of your mobile app. Just press on the magnifying glass button, type the letters ATS Live, it will take you directly to my channel. Also, if you can't find it, even then, you have an option to scan the QR code, right? Now, this will be the question of the day that we are going to write or attempt to write today, and you know the drill. Please submit the answers before 8 p.m. every day so that I can evaluate those answers and tell you what is good and what is not, right? Now, let us start with our today's discussion. This article actually appeared in the Indian Express newspaper on the business page, which is on 17th page. Now, this article highlights that the Reserve Bank of India, which is the regulator of banks and NBFCs in India, it has made a regulatory move in order to increase the credit flow from banks to NBFCs, right? And what it has done, it has tried to cut the risk weight assets on the loan. Now, this Reserve Bank of India move, it has reduced the reserve or the risk weight on bank loans by 25 percentage points, that is by 2.25%, right? Now, this reduction in risk weight of the bank loans will try to understand what are these risk weight and how this will actually increase the credit flow to the NBFC sector. Now, every loan that the banks extend to any type of customers, for that example, there are certain risks attached to it, right? For example, if they are extending loans to farmers, that loans will be quite risky because farmers naturally are a vulnerable section of people and there is a fair bit of chance that that farmer might not be able to return the loan back, right? But if the same bank is extending loan to a very good company, do you understand the risk associated of not returning that loan will be quite low. So in that regard, banks assess the different types of risk, and based on every loan that they extend, based on the risk factor, they have to keep certain money aside so as to what will happen in case that loan does not return back. So it will create liquidity crisis in the banks. So that is why banks keep some capital aside so that if the loan does not come back, banks still will have some kind of a capital. And this keeping aside of the capital depends upon the risk factor of the loan. Higher is the risk factor of the loan, the banks are required to keep a larger portion of the money as a reserve. Understood? So naturally, you'll understand the opposite will happen if the loan that they are extending is of very less risky in nature. So naturally, the amount of money that they will be keeping aside as a reserve will be quite low. So this is how the risk weight of any kind of a loan depends. Of higher risk weight, we have to keep larger amount aside. Lower risk weight, we have to keep lower amount aside. So the higher the risk weight, the more capital the bank needs to set aside, making the lending more expensive. As more capital will be set aside by banks, so naturally banks will have less amount of money to extend loans, and in order to make profit, they will charge higher interest rates on it. Similarly, the opposite will happen if the lower risk factor of the loans, they have to keep lesser money aside, so they will be having more money to extend as loans, and naturally the interest rates will fall down. So this is how risk factor of any loan decides whether the kind of interest rate that the banks will charge. Similarly, as you can understand, NBFCs, they are not allowed to take demand deposits like saving banks account or a current bank account from customers. Rather, for their credit requirements, they depend on banks to give them loans, and using that money only, NBFCs lend it to their customers. Now, in order to increase the flow of money from banks to NBFC sector, what the RBI has done, it has reduced the risk weight of loans that banks extend to NBFCs, and it has reduced it by 0.25%, right? So naturally, when banks will categorize NBFC's loans as less risky, it will require them to keep less amount with themselves as reserve and naturally extend more money as loans. So that is why it is expected to boost the credit flow to the NBFC sector. Understood this entire? I have switched on the fan in Delhi. Well, even I have switched on the AC here. Good evening, sir. केसरिया आज दिल्ली में बहुत ठंड है. It's not ठंड exactly. It's just the sun is not out so bright. Now, let us see if you can solve this question. Consider the following statements regarding risk weights in banks. Now, risk weights determine the amount of capital banks must set aside based on the risk level of their loan expenses. This is a straightforward statement, therefore a right statement. The lower risk weight increases the capital requirements for banks, making the lending more expensive. Now, lower risk weight, what it does, it reduces the capital requirements that the banks need to keep aside, therefore making loans not expensive but cheaper. Okay. So therefore, second statement you can understand is incorrect. Option A is right. Yes, Sarang, you're correct. FTY, Ayush, you're right. Bagaspings, you're also right. Now moving on to the next article. This article states that the recently Prime Minister Modi extended 19th installment of the PM Kisan Yojana. Now until now, since the time PM Kisan has been introduced, until now 3.5 lakh crore of money has reached to the farmers just because of this scheme. So this increases the financial stability of the farmers. It makes them less vulnerable to go to a informal money lender, which otherwise would have charged the farmers higher interest rates, right? So this is the benefit of this scheme. Now the context of this article is that by extending the 19th installment of the PM Kisan Yojana, the government has also said that 6 years has been completed since this scheme was introduced. Now, recently an important reform was made. Farmers ID, which is actually an Aadhaar linked ID for farmers, and this ID contains many details of farmers regarding of their land records, what kind of crops they are growing, what kind of livestock they have. So the government made a regulatory requirement that to get benefits under the PM Kisan Yojana, the farmers will have to link it with their farmers ID, right? So therefore, farmers ID, which already will have the necessary details regarding to the farmers of their land records, livestock holdings, also the kind of crops they are growing, this will help government identify whether a farmer having this kind of a particular farmer's ID owns land or does not own land. And you understand this kind of a scheme, it is extended only to the farmers who are owning the lands, right? Now the farmer ID, it guarantees that the applicant farmers own the land, and therefore registration process would be vastly simplified if the farmers would link their farmer's ID with PM Kisan Yojana. Now, in this regard, let us understand what is PM Kisan Yojana. Now, it is a central sector scheme. Central sector scheme, if there's a scheme which is called a central sector scheme, automatically understand that the 100% of the funding of that scheme would come exclusively from the central government, right? Now, under this scheme, the income support of 6,000 rupees per year is provided to the farmer families. Now, this is made not in one-time payment of 6,000 rupees, but rather a 3 equal installments of 2,000 rupees each. So, the sum total of money that is extended to farmers in 1 year becomes 6,000 rupees. Now, this is provided to all farmer families, right? Farmer families who are land holding, right? Earlier, this was only provided to small and medium farmers, but rather now, this scheme is provided to all land holding farmer families. Now you have to understand, not every farmer thus becomes eligible. For example, farmer families who are paying income taxes, government employees who are also the farmers, and also professionals like doctors, architects, etc., they are also excluded from the scheme, right? So technically this says we are extending it to all except these people. Now, the definition of family, it is very different than the other schemes that are in application. Usually, the schemes of Government of India, they provide benefits to the beneficiary based on their household. But here the beneficiaries are the families themselves, which means that a husband, wife and a minor child. So this constitutes the family, and the land holding families are eligible to get the benefits under PM Kisan Yojana. Now, who will identify the farmers who will be eligible for the scheme? The responsibility of that is given to the state government and the UT administration, who will identify farmer families who are eligible to support or who are eligible to get support under the scheme. Also, implementation of farmers ID is also the responsibility of state government and union territory administration. Now, the fund in this scheme, it is not provided in kind of cash to the farmers, rather it is transferred directly into the bank account using the direct benefit transfer. Understood? Any doubt regarding this scheme? I hope not. So, let us see if you can solve this question. With reference to PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, consider the following statement. It is a central sector scheme with contributions from the central government only. Now, most of the time, UPSC uses absolute statement just to throw off the candidates, because candidates, they have a propensity to mark the statements correct if this is an absolute statement. But I have crafted the statement making it an absolute statement, but read it again, you will find that this statement is a correct statement because it is actually an central sector scheme. Therefore, 100% funding of this scheme is provided by the union government. Now, under this scheme, income support, it is provided only to the small and marginal farmer families. Is it correct? The answer is no. It is provided to all land holding farmer families, right? So, second statement becomes incorrect. First is right. We have to identify correct statement. Option A here is the right answer. Ayush, option A is right. Ashil, Shushmita, Narsimha, Sarang, you're all correct. Now, I did not understand the definition of the family. Now, Sejal, definition of the family here means that the family will include husband, wife and a minor child. earlier, the government used to extend benefits to the scheme as per the households. So, a household may have one or more families, right? But this is extended to one family. Yes, Rishav, Jayesh, Kusum, all of you are right. Saujanya, I'm getting PM Kisan Yojana. Oh, good. Sir, can we interlink PM Kisan to Swamitwa? We can't, government can. My mother's account received PM Kisan money to 2000. Oh, nice, Deepak. So, is PM Kisan helping you guys? Please let me know in the comments. Also, a comment after the video ends, okay? Now, also please, if you are liking this video, do not forget to give us a thumbs up and also let us know in the comments after this video end if you are finding this video helpful or not. Now, moving on to the next article, this article highlights that the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, he rode an elephant while on a visit to the Kaziranga National Park along with leading foreign diplomats. Now, these kind of an initiative are very important as far as India's international relations are concerned, because you're not just dealing with a country based on their economic importance or their political importance, but you also highlight how your culture can actually enrich the relations with the other countries, right? So that is why India's ecological heritage, one of which is demonstrated by the Kaziranga National Park, taking the foreign diplomats there is also a very recommendable job. Now, let us understand the context of the scheme. I told you, right? Dr. S. Jaishankar went to Kaziranga National Park along with 61 heads of missions of 61 different countries. Now, if you can see from this map, I've taken it from the Assam government's Instagram handle. This highlights the 7 protected areas or the national parks located in Assam. Now, as you can see, the first one located here is Kaziranga, which is by far the most famous one in Assam. It also includes Raimona, Manas, Orang, Nameri, Dibru-Saikova, Dehang Patkai. I can vaguely remember we have already covered Dibru-Saikova in our previous lectures. Okay, so these are 7 important national parks of Assam. So let us understand what is the Kaziranga National Park, why is it famous, where is it located, every detail, right? Now, Kaziranga National Park, it is located in Golaghat and Nagaon districts of Assam between Brahmaputra river and the Karbi hills in the northeast. Now, the rivers which actually flows through this national park, it is river Difalu, which is a tributary of Brahmaputra. It flows alongside the national park, and also another tributary known as Mora Difalu. It flows along the southern boundary. So, these are the 2 rivers that flows in the national park of the Kaziranga National Park, and also it is given the status of national park. Also, it is a tiger reserve, important bird area, and also the UNESCO World Heritage Site, the recognition for which was provided to Kaziranga National Park in 1985. Now, it is located at the junction of Australasia and Indo-Asian flyway. So, also many migratory birds, they also find their homes in the Kaziranga National Park. So, that is why biodiversity wise, ecological wise, this national park becomes very important. Now, let us understand some of the various characteristics of Kaziranga National Park. It is the largest undistributed area in the Brahmaputra Valley floodplain. The flora of this Kaziranga National Park, it is famous for tall elephant grasses, rattan cane, aquatic plants like water hyacinths and lotus. Now, this makes this plant or this national park a marshland territory, right? Now, the fauna, the most famous fauna of this national park is greater one-horned rhinoceros, also known as Indian rhinoceros. Now, this park has the largest population of Indian one-horned rhinoceros. That is, as per the latest census of 2022, there were almost 2,613 one-horned rhinoceros. Other fauna of this area includes hulok gibbon, tiger, leopard, Indian elephant, sloth bear, wild water buffalo, and swamp deer. Understood? Any doubts? I hope not. So, let us solve this question. Consider the following statements regarding the Kaziranga National Park. It is located in Assam and it is famous for its vast stretches of tall grassland and marshlands. Yes, this is right. Elephant grass is actually very famous of Kaziranga National Park. Now, the river Barak, it flows through the park, providing an essential water source to its diverse flora and fauna. This is incorrect. I told you the 2 rivers like Difalu and Mora Difalu, not Barak. So, second statement is incorrect. It is home to world's largest population of one-horned rhinoceros. Yes, it is correct, and it is declared UNESCO's World Heritage Site in 1985. This is also correct. Now, first and third is right, second is not. Option C here is the right answer. Now, one-horned rhinoceros in IUCN status is categorized as a vulnerable species. So, I hope you remember that also. Yes, Shushmita, Kesaria, my home state is Assam. Nice to see. Nice to know that. I actually want to visit Assam sometimes. Ashil, Baga, all of you are right. So is Narsimha and Sejal. Now moving on to the next article. This article actually appeared in the Indian Express website, and if you can see, it talks about black plastics. Now black plastics have found in our day-to-day usage everywhere. Now there is a recent study that was conducted on black plastics, and it revealed that the presence of toxic flame retardants, it has actually sparked concerns about the food contaminations and the potential health crisis that can emerge out of using these black plastics. Now let us understand some of the details about black plastics. It is often made from recycled electronic waste such as TV, computers and appliances. Now electronic waste, it contains harmful substances like flame retardants like bromine, as well as heavy metals such as lead, cadmium and mercury. Now these substances, these are banned in many countries due to their toxicity. Although in some form or the other these are banned in India, but as you can understand, when black plastics are also made from the electronic e-waste, so naturally the things that are present in electronics will automatically find their way into our black plastics also, right? Now the black plastics, these are commonly used in kitchens, particularly the takeout containers which are used for packaging and toys. For example, all of you must have ordered food from Zomato, Swiggy. The food comes in containers like this, and this is exactly what black plastic is, what I'm talking about today. Now the harmful effects of the black plastics is that there are many health risks that can be used or that can be associated with use of such compounds, such as neurotoxic heavy metals, and also these are very carcinogenic compounds. What are carcinogenic? The compounds that can actually have the potential to cause cancer, those are known as carcinogenic compounds. Now also the food contamination, by exposing them to heat like warm food, it can cause chemical leaching into the food, so therefore consumption of such food is also very expensive. Now environmental hazard, difficulty due to recycling leading to the increased plastic pollution. Now people who are ordering food from the online websites, if the food arrives in these containers, so you have no other option, right? But do not reuse these containers to heat the food in it. Just take them out, heat the food on a particular steel bowl or in a glass bowl, you will be fine, right? Now let us see if we can solve this question. With reference to black plastics, consider the following statement. They contain high levels of toxic additives and heavy metals which can leach into the soil and water. Yes, correct. Due to their dark pigmentation, they are often non-recyclable and end up in landfills, incinerators, contributing to the pollution. Also correct. Now black plastics, they break down more easily under sunlight, leading to the faster release of microplastics and ecosystem. Now does plastics break down under sunlight? The answer is no. These are not breaking down into sunlight, therefore they find themselves into our atmosphere, into our ecology much for a larger time, because these are non-biodegradable and not break down or does not break down into different components, right? So third statement becomes incorrect. First and second is right, third is not. Option A therefore is the right answer. Yes, Narsimha, you're right. Sir, is it easy to remember all national parks name and location? Now, not all national parks, particularly the national parks which are in news. And if you read the news during the monsoon season, you'll always find the mention of Kaziranga National Park. Why? Because it has large population of the one-horned rhinoceros and also the Brahmaputra river flows through it. So whenever there is a monsoon, the flow of Brahmaputra river increases too much, and there is a propensity that the waters will flood the Kaziranga National Park. So you'll also see the news that for unfortunate reasons, many one-horned rhinoceros, these are displaced and some of them even die. So therefore, Kaziranga National Park is probably the most important national park in the whole of Northeast. So therefore, you should remember such names and important details about such national parks. And also, if you take a look at the PYQs, you'll see many national parks have appeared in the questions one year or the other. So that is why you can't afford to miss them. Now, Kusum, you are also right. Rishabh, Sejal, Baga, Spinks, Narsimha, all of you, option A is correct. Now, as I tell you every day, in case, as I told you, right, national parks, what national parks are important? These are usually told to our students in the foundation lectures, which is provided in the StudyIQ's website. Now, foundation lectures or attending through them is very necessary for every aspirant who is seriously looking to consider or who is seriously looking to attempt the UPSC exam, because the foundation lectures, by the virtue of it or by the name of it, it provides you with the foundational level knowledge. It provides you with study material, teaching of all the subjects, and also the test series for both prelims and mains. Now you have an option to register for the courses until tomorrow, that is 28th of February, because currently the courses are available at a discounted rate. Now if you look at the website here, and if you are to subscribe to an English exclusive course, please scroll on to here, click on UPSC IAS English, and see there are 2 batches which are available. This one is for 2026. So click on this 2026 wala batch, and you'll see the course is right now available at 34,999. But if you use the code which might be flashing on the bottom half of your screen, that is ATS Live, you can get it for much less amount of fees. Right? Click on the offers available, add promo code, click on enter coupon code, add ATS Live. So click on ATS Live, and you see the course fees has reduced from 34,999 to 27,999, right? That is the discount of almost 7,000 rupees. So that is how you save the hard-earned money of your parents. Please make sure to register yourself if you are having any doubts regarding to the foundation level lectures, right? Every doubts, every problem that you might face during it will be solved diligently by StudyIQ IAS, okay? But do not forget to add the code ATS Live. Also, let us move to the next article of the day. This article belongs to the subject of geography, and it tells us that the Iraq is slowly sinking into the earth. And what is the reason? It is actually the geological study that is highlighted that Iraq is sinking. Now let us look at the reasons of it. Now the plate tectonics is the prime factor why is actually Iraq or any kind of a slab might sink into the earth. Now the sinking is caused particularly with respect to Iraq due to Neothetis oceanic slab, which is the remnant of an ancient ocean floor that existed over more than 66 million years ago. Now this slab, it is located on the region between Arabian as well as Eurasian continental peninsula, and it is now splitting apart from the southeastern Turkey and the northwestern Iran. Now this Neothetis slab, it is actively sinking and it is dragging the Zagros region of Iraq downward. Now Zagros mountain ranges, it is located in the region of Iraq, Iran and Turkey, particularly the eastern part of the Turkey. It was formed due to the tectonic collisions that happened between Arabian and Eurasian peninsula. Now this sinking, it is occurring extremely slowly, which is not technically visible to human eyes, but if you consider this sinking event over a long period of time, then you'll actually find that the mountain ranges, these are actually sinking into the earth. Now this is the region I'm talking about. This is the Zagros mountain ranges, which extends from Iran up till the sea or the Strait of Malacca here, sorry, not Strait of Malacca. From Iran, it extends into Iraq and also extends to the eastern part of the Turkey. So this is the Zagros mountain where the sinking is actually happening. Now this Zagros mountain, it is a mountain range which is located in Central Asia, includes countries of Turkey, Iraq and Iran. Now the geographical extent of this mountain range, it covers around 1500 kilometers, flowing from northwest to southeast direction and borders the eastern Turkey and the northern Iraq in the Strait of Hormuz. Sorry, I forgot the name. I was calling it Malacca. It is Strait of Hormuz. Now this area also is very important for geo-economic perspective, mainly because this area is very rich in oil and natural gases. So whatever oil India imports from Iran and Iraq, it usually is sourced from this Zagros mountain ranges only, and this fold belt contains some of the largest oil fields in the world. Now Zagros mountains is a fold mountain which, as you can understand, it came into existence by the collision of the Eurasian as well as the Arabian plates. Okay. Now let us move to the another article. This article actually appeared in the explained section of the newspaper, that is on page 18, and it states that the recently a 2.5-year-old girl child was the first person who became or who was treated for the spinal muscular atrophy while still she was in the womb, right? So that is how after she has grown about 2.5 years, now we have seen that she is actually cured for the spinal muscular atrophy. Now let us understand what is this spinal muscular atrophy. It is actually a genetic disorder that causes weak muscles, right? Because it affects the nerves that controls the muscles from functioning. Now these nerves, these are called as motor neurons. Why are these called as motor neurons? Because these are found in spinal cords, and these motor neurons are responsible for sending signals from the muscles into our brains. So whenever this signal is affected, if the signal does not reaches from the brain to the muscle and otherwise, then you can understand the person will not be able to move the muscle, right? So every activity that you are doing, me moving the hand, you moving your head to watch this lecture, all of it is done with muscle activity, right? And if God forbid there's some problems in the nerves or contacting of the nerves from the brain, this leads to spinal muscular atrophy. Now the factor responsible, or the mutation which is responsible for this kind of a disease, it is called mutation, it is called as SN1 gene. Now SMN1 gene, it produces an important protein which keeps motor neurons healthy. Now when the body does not make enough of the protein, therefore the motor neurons, they die and the muscles become weaker over a period of time. Now this kind of a mutation does not happen automatically in a person, rather this kind of a mutation is inherited from the either of the parents or sometimes even both of them. Now if both of the parents, these are carriers of the faulty gene, so the probability of the child being born with spinal muscle atrophy becomes 25%. Understood? So this is how this kind of a disease is transmitted, as it is a genetic disease, therefore it is resultant of a genetic mutation in the genes of SMN1. Understood? Now fold mountain is an example of a mountain that has folded out of the two different continental or an ocean sea plate, right? For example, Himalayas, it is also an example of fold mountain, right? So whenever two different kind of a continental or even oceanic plates collide, so there becomes a fold and it leads to the development of mountain ranges. Understood, Krishan? Non-banking financial companies, Muthoot Finance, Shriram Logistics Insurance, yes, these are all examples of NBFCs. Now, there are currently more than 4,000 NBFCs in India. What is NBFCs? Please repeat once. Well, NBFCs are non-banking financial corporations. For example, you can't go and open a saving banks account in the NBFCs. What NBFCs do, that they take money from elsewhere, like from banks, and they extend loans to other customers. Understood? Now, NBFCs, sometimes they also take deposits in form of fixed deposits, but they are not allowed to take saving banks and current bank deposit. Also, you can't send the money from one NBFC account to another NBFC account, which is not the case with respect to banks, because you can actually send the money from one bank to another because they are the part of payment and settlement system. NBFCs, they are not. Now, these are the effects of what spinal muscular atrophy does to a child. So please watch this image after I upload the notes in my Telegram channel. Now let us see if you can solve this question. Now consider the following statements regarding spinal muscular atrophy. It is a genetic disorder that leads to muscle weakness due to dysfunction of motor neuron in the spinal cord. Yes, this is correct. The condition is caused by mutation in the SMN2 gene, which results into the insufficient production of protein essential for motor neuron survival. Now, I told you this is resulting into the mutation in the SMN1 gene, not SMN2. Give me a minute.
Hello friends, good evening. Am I audible and visible? Yes, somebody please ping me.
Where is the sound coming from? I don't know. Yes. Do NBFCs provide credit cards? No, they don't. Sir, generally muscular atrophy is dealt with steroids that help with hypertrophy. It's the same drugs taken by body builders for muscular growth. I am surprised by this information. Well, I am not a doctor, so I am not aware of these things. Ashil, option A. Shushmita, one only. Sejal, option A. Narsimha A. Shushmita, Rishabh, yes, option A is correct, as the second statement is incorrect, right? Now moving on to the last article of the day. This article actually appeared in the op-ed sections of the Indian Express newspaper, and this article was written by the former vice chairperson of the Niti Aayog, and he also is an economist. So you can understand he knows many details about economy more than you and I combined. Now, he wrote an article in the Indian Express newspaper highlighting that recently the finance minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, she announced many measures in the budget. The most popular one was the relaxation of the income tax payments. Now, she has she has increased the exemption limit. So, technically now a person incoming or the income of a person as much as 12 lakh rupees every year, it will be exempted from the income taxation. Now, the intention of the government is to increase the disposable income that is in the hands of Indian citizens, right? Now, the article which is written by Mr. Rajiv Kumar, he says that indeed it will have a multiplier effect, but not to an extent as it has been argued by some of the commentators. And he gives many reasons to it. So, let us understand this. Now, first of all, what is government looking to do by cutting off income tax rate? First of all, I told you it will increase the disposable income, as the people earlier they were required to pay taxes, now they will not be required to pay taxes. So, for example, if it leads to saving up of rupees 50,000 for you every year, so naturally you will be having 50,000 more rupees at your own disposal. So, what if you decide to spend that money on various goods and services? So, naturally, when you are having increased disposable income, the demand for goods and services increases in the economy. So, this is the first reason why the government has reduced the taxation rate, or it has provided the exemption to many sections of people earning up to 12 lakh rupees to pay income taxes. Now, one of the other results of this increased demand is the private companies. If they are looking to cater to this demand, they will have to increase their supply. And what if their supplies is already at the maximum level? So, naturally, the private companies will have to increase their investment. They will have to match this demand by creation of newer assets. So, therefore, capital expenditure and creation of new assets will increase in the Indian economy. Now, I told you about various methods used to calculate GDP, right? One of this method is called as expenditure method. Well, expenditures made by various different sections of Indian economy, they are added. For example, the expenditures which is used to calculate GDP, it includes private final consumption expenditure, it includes gross fixed capital formation, it includes government expenditure, and it includes the net exports minus imports, right? So, this is how we calculate GDP. Now, by increasing in disposable income of public, the government is looking to increase this component of the GDP, that is private final consumption expenditure. Now, to meet the increased demand of people, that they will have more income at their own hand, so they will start demanding more items in the market, right? So, the fixed capital formation, which is the capital formation done by both private sector as well as public sector, it will increase, particularly that of private sector, because they are eventually producing the goods and services which is demanded by the people in the market. So, they will have to increase their capital expenditure, they will have to increase their capacity, and that is how it will lead to multiplier in the effect in the economy. Now, when both of these components they increase, therefore, naturally you can understand GDP growth will also increase in India. So, the intention of the government primarily was to increase the disposable income. This will lead to increase in investment, particularly by the private sector. All of this will contribute into increasing of Indian GDP, right? Now, Narasimha sir, why don't you take Hindu together? Now, I ensure that every article that is covered in the Indian Express, it is covered, and in my experience, I have seen that the articles in Indian Express and Hindus, these are not different articles. Yes, Kusum, I teach economy here. Now, but this article also states that although people are saying that it will lead to increase in GDP growth, but the impact of this measure on GDP's growth will not be that prominent as it is highlighted by many commentators. So, we'll understand why this actual impact will not be this prominent. Now, first of all, there is an assumption that if people have more money in their hand, they will spend all this money into buying goods and services, right? But what if people decide to save this money? So, in that case, expenditures will not increase. And it is also seen that the people in their higher income groups, they have a tendency or propensity to save larger amount of their incomes rather than spending it, right? So, in that case, if the spending will not increase, rather people will increase their saving, therefore, the amount of increase in demand will not happen as it is assumed. Now, there is a term which is used in economy known as marginal propensity of consumption. It highlights how much money actually you spend and how much money you save. Now it has been seen that people belonging to higher income groups, they have a higher tendency to save the money. Rather, on the other hand, people belonging to lower income groups, they have a higher tendency to spend the money that they earn. Naturally, because they earn less, so in order to meet their day-to-day requirements, they have to spend larger section of the money from their own income, which is not the case with the middle income and higher income group. Now, this measure, which allows exemption of paying of income tax, particularly to people earning up to 12 lakh rupees every year. So it is highlighted that people will start saving more and not spend this much amount of money. So the resultant increase in GDP will not happen. Also, what if people decide to increase the demand for imported goods? So for that reason, the GDP will not increase, rather your imports will increase. So this is one of the other side effects also that may happen. Now, what if people will decide to settle their previous debt or the loans that they have taken from the banks, from private sector, in order to use this money and repay their debt? So also the increase in spending will not happen. But what if the government has decided to forego about 1 lakh rupees or 1 lakh crore rupees in revenue every year by providing this relief to the taxpayers? Now, this shortage of money that the government will face will be at the tune of 1 lakh crore rupees every year. So now, government which could have used this money in order to undertake capital expenditure in the economy, it will not happen. Rather, if it decides to still undertake capital expenditure, it has to increase its borrowing, right? Now, what we have understood in our previous discussion, if government increases the borrowing, it can lead to increase in inflation risk in India, right? So this is the side effects that may happen. That first of all, one of the assumptions that the government and the many commentators have made, that all the money which will be saved by the reduction in the tax outgo will automatically be spent in the economy in buying of goods and services. But what if people decide to save this money? So in that case, the increase in demand will not happen. What if people decide to buy products which are imported into India, not manufactured into India? And you understand, while calculating GDP, we only take into account the products that are manufactured in our domestic territory. So also the GDP will not be impacted by increase in imports. What if people decide to settle their debt against spending the money? So then also the GDP will not increase. Government also has provided the relief. So that means it is not earning 1 lakh crore rupees, which it would have earned in case the exemptions would not have been provided. So this may lead to reduction in capital expenditure by the government, and also it may lead to increase in borrowing by the government. And if it leads to increase in borrowing by the government, then it can create inflationary risk in the economy. So these are the side effects that may happen. Now in this regard, the Rajiv Kumar, he has written some kind of a suggestion. So let us look at those suggestions, right? Now, what is multiplier effect? Now, multiplier effect is that, suppose if I increase my spending, right? So if I decide to buy mobile phones, if I decide to buy bags, if I decide to buy shirts, if I decide to buy this pen, right? So naturally, the companies who will be making the bags, who will be making the shirts, who will be making the pen, they will see increase in demand of their products. So naturally, they will have to produce more products, and when they start producing more products, the factories will require more labor, right? So it will provide more employment, it will lead to increase in GDP. So my spending has led to many other effects. That my spending has led to more manufacturing of this pen, which leads to more expenditures by the company in their factory. They will hire more labor, and the laborers will get the salary, which again they will spend. So this is how multiplier effect works, that one effect leads to another, which leads to another. So this is a good multiplier effect. Understood? Sir, please explain import leakages again. Now, what happens? Suppose, how is GDP calculated? GDP is calculated by assuming that all the products that are manufactured in your own territory, right? But what if I decide to spend my money in buying any good that is imported into the country, right? So although I am spending my money, but will that spend lead to increase in India's GDP? No, right? Because you are importing that item, and imports, they are not calculated in GDP, rather they have to be minus from the GDP. Understood, Bhagat Sphinx, and understood, Biswabrat? Yes, FTY, you're right. MPS plus MPC is 1. Marginal propensity to save and marginal propensity to consume, both of them adds to 1. Now, Mr. Rajiv Kumar has given some suggestions also. First of all, he said that the original intention of the government should not be to increase private final consumption expenditure, but it has been constant in the economy. Rather, what you need to do is to catalyze private investment, because since the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that the investment in the economy is primarily led by governmental efforts, whereas the private sector investment have been somewhat subdued and rather less. So that is how we can increase the private sector investment if we want to increase the GDP growth in the economy. And for that, the Rajiv Kumar has suggested constitution of a high-level committee under the chairmanship of Madam Finance Minister, which will also include State Finance Minister. And the purpose of this committee will be to reduce the regulatory and the compliance burden on the businesses of India. When you reduce regulatory burden on the businesses, when you reduce compliance burden on the businesses, what happens? That the ease of doing businesses increase, right? So therefore, when the burden itself of compliance and regulatory will be reduced by the businesses, they will be quite easy to set up a new business, and this will create increase in private expenditure. Also, there is a necessary to address rent seeking and uncertainty. Now, there is more uncertainty in the economy, particularly by the fact because of many rent seeking behavior, like lower level corruptions in the government, high level of regulatory burden, increased compliances with respect to environmental laws, with respect to labor laws, and all of this actually very discourages the amount of businesses that are in India. So these are the reasons, that is regulatory burden, uncertainty, rent seeking behavior, that contributes to the subdued private investment. And what should government look to do to increase the private investment? Also, the Rajiv Kumar, in his article, he has highlighted that although government has provided this measure to the people, it should also adhere to the fiscal discipline, that it should not increase its borrowing by too much, because otherwise borrowing leads to increase in inflation in the economy. And also, if government increases its borrowing, it sends wrong signal into the foreign investment market, because automatically the foreign investors will think that if the government has increased its borrowing, naturally the fiscal health of the government might be quite vulnerable. So that actually inhibits foreign investment. So government should ensure fiscal discipline while making or increasing the levels of private investment. So these are the suggestions that have been given by the article of the Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Now, please try to write this question. Make sure to write this question at the earliest possible time, and make sure to submit your answers positively by 8 p.m. Now, I'm going on a leave for next 2 days. So the next Indian Express newspaper analysis will be now on Monday, right? But I will make sure that the news that will be covered in the next 2 days, I will make sure not to miss out on anything. I will be discussing everything. Understood? So I'll see you again on Monday. Until then, please try to revise the earlier sessions. Please try to go through your notes, and also please do not forget to write your answers. And you can submit your answers on this Telegram group ATS Live, and make sure to submit them before 8 p.m. Now, I take your leave. I'll see you again on Monday. Please have a very good weekend.